Iraq's water shortages crisis. Iraq is currently running out of water. These issues stand in the way of Iraq's recovery following 3 wars: Iran-Iraq War, Gulf War, and 2003 U.S. invasion. Almost all of Iraq's water comes from 2 rivers, the Furat and the Dijla, which run the entire length of the country and converge to form the Shat al-Arab river in the south of the country. The rivers provide drinking water for all of the cities along the river. On the Shat al-Arab is Iraq's second largest city, with population of over 4 million people.
This is the Shat al-Arab. The river winds through the city of Basra, here in southern Iraq. It was once one of the most important waterways in the Middle East.
Here lies the great port of Basra, at the crossroads of the world's trade.
It fed dozens of canals throughout Basra and earned the city the nickname the Venice of the Middle East. It made Basra the symbol of Iraq's growth and prosperity. Today, it's the second largest city with over 4 million people, and with these oil fields and the only deepwater port in the country, it's also the economic center. About 80% of Iraq's revenue comes from here.
Basra was once the most important waterway in the Middle East. About 80% of Iraq's revenue comes from this area through massive oil refineries. However, the population of Basra are constantly revolting against the government about the lack of clean water. Because of infrastructure damage, large parts of the population do not have adequate water supply or sanitation systems. In 2018, 100,000 people from the city hospitalized for the water-related illnesses.
So the Iraqi government announced a massive $100 billion reconstruction effort in 2018. But by the summer, the water crisis came to a head at the southern tip of the country in Basra, where the river was dangerously low and toxic. Deadly riots erupted in Basra. Government buildings were burned, and many called for the prime minister to resign.
Iraq relies heavily on the waters from these rivers, but does not control them, as both rivers begin in Turkey. 80% of Iraq waters are controlled by neighbors who have been keeping more and more for themselves. Turkey has built massive dams to provide water and electricity to its population, effectively holding the rivers hostage. Today only, a quarter of normal flow of water reach Iraq.
Iraq relies heavily on these rivers, but it doesn't control them. Both rivers begin in Turkey. About 71% of Iraq's water comes from there, while Syria and Iran add another 10% as the rivers move south, which means 81% of Iraq's water is controlled by its neighbors. And they've been keeping more and more of it for themselves.
Iran and Iraq had a 1975 agreement for shared water, but that fell apart when the two countries went to war in the 1980s.
Hamrin Lake used to hold more than 2 billion cubic meters of water. But because of Iran's dam program, it has lost much of that capacity. It has resulted in the Diyala River drying up, seriously affecting one of Iraq's 2 major river sources, the Tigris.
When the US invaded Iraq in 2003, they destroyed much of Iraq infrastructure. Sewage treatment plants in Baghdad were also destroyed, causing raw sewage to be discharged into the rivers. Following the wars, the UN imposed strict sanctions on Iraq, freezing bank accounts and restricting imports of construction materials and chemicals to purify the water supply.
Despite the uproar against corruption and the lack of public infrastructure, Iraqis continue to suffer. Year after year, the water crisis has gotten worse, and Basra, once a symbol of growth and prosperity, has come to represent what could be Iraq's biggest battle ahead. If the country wants to rebuild, it first needs to stabilize Basra and bring clean water to its people.
The government response. The government will continue implementing its plan to help Iraq to overcome the water crisis. The Basra water crisis response plan is one of a number of major plans to regenerate the water supply. In 2025, the national goal of 96% population with access to improved sanitation will be met. This is because waste disposal methods are improving and health awareness is being spread about proper method of waste disposal and sanitation. The Iraq government alone, with assistance from the international community, will continue to work toward a solution to this crisis. Iraq's water shortages crisis.
The Sound Seekers Audio Festival is funded by the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland using the television licence fee, in partnership with the Irish Research Council. For further details, go to thesoundseekers.com.